From starring in musicals to cheesy old westerns, Janis Paige has done it all. Comedies, dramas, and noirs, to name but a few. Her extensive acting career lasted well over 50 years, which means her powerful screen presence is part of TV and cinema history. She was versatile, she was dynamic, and she was utterly beautiful. So what better way to honor a golden age starlet like her than by reminiscing about her most unforgettable movie roles? Let's dive into her legacy with the top 10 Janis Paige movies of all time.
I'm Deborah Vaughn.
Yes, I know.
Good. In that case, I'm sure you'll understand.
Number 10. One Sunday Afternoon.
I'm Virginia Brush, and this is my very special girlfriend, Amy. Amy Lynn. Let's cut out all this nonsense. This is a prearranged date, and we all know it.
Even relatively early on in her career, Janis Paige was proving herself as one of the top up-and-coming starlets of Hollywood's golden era. And perhaps this was nowhere more evident than in her performance as Virginia Brush in 1948's One Sunday Afternoon. Here, she would portray the girl of our lead character, Timothy Grimes' dreams, someone who he'd never built up the nerve to profess his love for. And this means that when she eventually marries his best friend instead, it leaves him with a whole lot of regret and a need to vent to her friend Amy. Of course, this wasn't the first time such a story would make it to screen though, as it was originally put out in 1933 under the same name, though this time with a cast which included Gary Cooper and Fay Wray. And then, after a second version would be produced in 1941, entitled The Strawberry Blonde, with it being this version, which was eventually adapted again as a musical in 1948.
The kind that builds their own ships, charts their own trips, across the Atlantic? Exactly.
Number 9. The Time, the Place, and the Girl.
Why don't you marry the girl?
What?
So you can get her off your mind.
I hope I never see her again.
Oh, you've really got it bad.
During the initial years when she was building up a name for herself, Janis Paige developed a reputation for someone who could always stand out in a musical comedy. And this is why she worked so well in 1946's Technicolor extravaganza, The Time, the Place, and the Girl. What role does she play here? Well, it's that of the girlfriend to one of our two leads, Jeff Howard and Stephen Ross, a pair of men who open a nightclub and have to deal with the subsequent interference of their next-door neighbors. No surprises for guessing that many comedy hijinks ensue then. And while Paige doesn't get a whole lot to do here, what she does add lets her show not just how funny she can be in some of the film's more slapstick moments, but also how good of a singer she is during her part on the standout track, A Rainy Night in Rio.
You really think I'm sweet?
Oh, but of course I do.
I always wanted to meet a man like you.
Number 8. The House Across the Street.
Dave, we had to get out of there
Why?
because someone was hiding behind the curtain in Carl's room.
Well, why didn't you tip me off?
Well, how could I?
1949's The House Across the Street sees Janis Paige really start to come into her own as, while she's still featured in a supporting role, it's a far meatier role than many of the ones she's been given before. In fact, this is one of the first times she really shines brighter than everyone else around her. After all, this is the role which sees her play Kit Williams, the girlfriend of the movie's lead, Dave Jocelyn, someone who gets her hands dirty by helping him to investigate a murder case for a newspaper article. And of course, as they do this together, a lot of great comedy takes place. For as great as Janis is though, it's really a team effort here as the entire cast pull their weight. And they obviously enjoyed working together because 4 members of the cast, namely Paige, Wayne Morris, Bruce Bennett, and Alan Hale, would team up once more to film The Younger Brothers later that same year.
Dave, wouldn't it make much more sense to go and find Carl's girlfriend, the one that took him to the rooming house?
No.
Number 7. Her Kind of Man.
I don't think I'll go to New York after all.
Because it means you're leaving me?
I wish you'd quit reading my mind.
If you'd read mine, you'd know I'm going with you.
Moving away from comedy and into noir instead, 1946's Her Kind of Man allowed Janis Paige to show another new side to herself, as instead of playing things for laughs, here she milks every ounce of drama out of her time on screen. And the way she does this is by playing the role of Georgia King, a woman caught up in a love triangle between a gangster and a Broadway columnist. Unsurprisingly then, things get very intense at points as Janis is forced to make a decision about which path she wants to go down, one which will forever associate her with a life of crime, or one which will be more law-abiding and honorable in its nature. But the real highlight here isn't that she's forced to make this choice. No, it's the song and dance scenes in which her vocal skills are utilized to their fullest, even if the soprano sections of her musical numbers were likely dubbed in by a studio singer, a common practice at the time.
I'm still a little delirious, you know.
I thought your arm was hurt, too.
Yes, but it needs to be exercised.
Number 6. Winter Meeting.
I see it's a special hat. A special occasion sort of a hat. My, I wish I thought it were poor little us and were the special occasion.
For a movie which stars Hollywood royalty Bette Davis, it's amazing that anyone else in 1948's Winter Meeting can stand out without being completely overshadowed. But somehow, Janis Paige doesn't just stand out here, she arguably puts on an even better performance than the star. Of course, the character she plays certainly helps her with this, as it's that of Peggy Markin, a woman who, even if she is forced to stand aside for the most part as her blind date, Slick Novak, takes more of an interest in another woman, still manages to make sure her role is equally as memorable. Unfortunately though, critics and filmgoers didn't really take to this one at the time, and for that reason, it was something of a flop. But in the years since, it's undergone something of a reappraisal and is now a lot more highly regarded. In fact, many people now enjoy it for its camp value alone.
Well, anyway, I told my kid brother I was having dinner with you, and he said, "Do you think you'd autograph my book for me? Do you mind, Lieutenant?"
At number 5, we have Bachelor in Paradise.
Jack Adams, the minute I leave the table, honestly, you men are all alike. You can't trust any man.
By the time 1961 came around, Janis Paige was well established as one of the top starlets in Hollywood. And that meant when MGM were looking for someone to feature in their hit romantic comedy released that year, Bachelor in Paradise, she was an obvious choice. What's the story of this one? Well, it tells the tale of a sleazy book writer, played by comedy giant Bob Hope, who finds himself becoming something of an unofficial relationship advisor to a group of married women. And of course, many of these women end up falling for him then, including Janis Paige's character, Dolores Jinson. And in an interesting note, there was actually a planned sequel to this one at one point, one named An Armful of Girls, which would have seen Hope being chased around Europe by the same women who'd fallen in love with him the first time around. But due to the original not being enough of a financial success, any plans for this were ultimately scrapped.
Oh, no.
Adam J. Niles.
Number 4, Cheyenne.
If you lay a hand on me, you big jughead, I'll bite it off.
Wait your turn, sister. Now let's have you roll.
Janis Paige may not be as well known for starring in westerns as some actors of her era, but that doesn't mean she didn't show up in one from time to time. And when she did, such as was the case with 1947's Cheyenne, she made it count. Why is this one worth watching? Well, because it tells the story of a stagecoach robber known only as the Poet and the attempts of a down-on-his-luck gambler to capture him. As for Paige's role in all of this, well, she plays a saloon singer who may or may not have a romantic connection to the mystery bandit. But what many fans won't know is that the character of the Poet was allegedly based on a real-life figure from the American Old West, a man named Black Bart who, like the character he inspired, often left poetic messages behind at the scenes of his crimes as a calling card.
You remember that gentleman friend I told you about?
Yes?
Well, him and me are going to get married.
Well, congratulations.
Number 3, Romance on the High Seas.
Aren't you happy?
Yes, I certainly am. It's just that it interferes with all my plans.
While she did have a varied career, Janis Paige's bread and butter was always in romantic musical comedies, as these allowed her to show off her biggest talents, with that being her comic timing and her singing ability. No prizes for guessing then that 1948's Romance on the High Seas was a major hit for her, as it gave her the chance to do everything she was good at. Of course, it was also a hit for everyone involved too though, as this tale of the romantic misunderstandings of a group of characters on board a cruise ship allowed not only Paige to shine, but also her co-stars, Jack Carson, Doris Day, and Don DeFore. So it was well deserved then when at the following year's Academy Awards, the film received not just one but 2 nominations, one for Best Original Score and another for Best Original Song with regards to the Doris Day performed It's Magic. And while it wouldn't win either of these, the Academy's recognition was still welcomed by the cast nonetheless.
Here I give up a perfectly wonderful cruise to trap my husband, and what happens? Nothing. And that girl is having a perfectly wonderful time under my name.
Number 2, Silk Stockings.
I don't know very much about ladies.
Nonsense! An artist is an artist. And speaking of artists, wait until you hear me sing some of your tunes.
Janis Paige may not be the star of 1957's Silk Stockings, a movie about a Russian government official sent to Paris to retrieve one of her people, only for her to then fall in love with an American movie producer. But that doesn't mean she doesn't stand out every second she's on screen, as her charisma radiates throughout it. And when you consider the fact that her co-stars here are Sid Charisse and Fred Astaire, that's especially impressive as they completely and utterly take command of things with their performances as the budding lovebirds. Of course, Paige's own performance as young actress Peggy Dayton is just as good in its own right. Hell, her work here only increased her notoriety as a star in Tinseltown. When it came to the director, Ruben Mamoulian, however, he wouldn't stick around in Hollywood afterwards. No, this would mark his last time behind the camera, as after realizing he was having so much fun creating the song and dance sequences, he'd go on to work on Broadway as a theater director instead.
No, I tell you the light's better out here.
But, Madame, the
Oh, this'll be fine. Out here I can see what I have on. It's what's under the dress that counts.
Our number one pick is Please Don't Eat the Daisies. There are plenty of options someone could go for when it comes to picking the best Janis Paige movie of all time. After all, she appeared in so many classics. But at the end of the day, at the top of that pile has to sit 1960s comedy Please Don't Eat the Daisies. And the reason for that is it just hits on every level as, in telling the story of a New York drama teacher turned theater critic who moves himself and his family out to the country and has to adjust, it's heavy on the laughs. And of course, many of these laughs come from Paige herself in her role as stage actor Deborah Vaughn. In fact, so successful was this one, it would later be adapted into a TV sitcom. And that sitcom, which starred Mark Miller and Pat Crowley, ended up running for 2 full seasons on NBC between 1965 and 1967, proving just how much material there was to milk out of the idea.
Why, the lying slob! I'll match my fanny against any fanny in America.
And there we have it, the top 10 Janis Paige movies of all time. No doubt you have your own list, so be sure to let us know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and get alerted of our next video. We'll hope to see you soon.